All right, so here we are. We got Matt Moss. Let me just introduce him, and I'll tell you some of the credits he has. Over 100 different syncs, 20 different shows like The Voice, America's Got Talent, NASCAR, Catfish, Duck Dynasty, Hockey Season, NHL, the Critics' Choice Awards, Teen Choice Awards, Marilyn, Denis Show, Lucky Dog, and many more. Welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Oh, good. Thanks for having me on.
No worries. So we've been, gosh, when did we first meet? Was it back in 11?
Maybe in
10?
2012, maybe
2012.
11. Yeah. So like we met at the Taxi Road Rally. And for anyone that doesn't know what that is, it's like a songwriting for film and sync convention or whatever. Man, I don't know. It may have been 2011 and I don't know. I think it was 2012. You know why? Because I met you and it was just like in passing. It was like maybe like a minute. It was just like, hey,
Yeah.
what's going on? What's up, mate? And
What's up, mate?
come on. And then I don't know,
Come on.
it's like a month or two later, we just like connected online. We're like, let's try to write some music together. Okay.
Yeah.
And you know, as anyone knows, you try to do that, and it's just like it's either gonna be like, okay, you know, kind of like a push and a pull. It's gonna suck, or you're just gonna fly with it. Well, with us, we just flew, man. We just started rolling. So like,
I
you just
think,
you just started sending me songs like vocal and guitar, and I would just produce them and send them back like the next day.
yeah, we were fast. I remember we cranked out so many really fast. And I think the one that we actually got on the Big Bang Theory, which we'll talk about in another video, I think that was one of the first collection or something, wasn't it? One of the first albums we did or something together?
It was the first actual collection. Everything else was just kind of like a one-off. You know, it was the first time we said, hey, let's actually sit down and like put, you know, a few together that have the same style and vibe of what's
Oh, yeah.
you know, at the time.
That's right. That's right. Well, cool, man. Well, it's good to have you here. I'm going to shoot off a few questions for you because I know lots of people want to know a little bit more about how they put the moss on their stuff.
Oh, right.
They want to get inside your head here. So, okay, so what got you into the sync world, into the library world, and what made that trigger, or what was that?
Yeah, so I'm 36 now. I remember when I was 17 or 18, I went and recorded a record at a local recording studio here. And I remember the engineer, I started hanging around him afterwards, you know, because I wanted to like learn how to record. And he was a cool guy. He was a musician. I was a musician as well. And I, you know, had met him by just going in there and recording with the band. I remember him telling me, he's like, have you ever heard of this thing called Taxi? I'm like, no. And so he told me about it. And it's just, you know, like we were talking about before, it's a place to learn how to write and compose and submit for film and TV. So, I mean, it was not another like 5 years until I even checked it out. But I went and played music on the road. I got off the road and I got married. And I was like, all right, I still got to do music. I'm not going to be able to travel all around. But I love recording and I love composing, even if it's just on one instrument. You know, I was just very, very minimum with my composing skills at the time. And I remembered Taxi at that point. And I was like, well, maybe this is legitimate. Let me sign up. And that's kind of what got my start there. And then I would just stay up late every night, you know, honing in on my skills and making a bunch of sucky music. So like, I remember one of the first ones I made and submitted for, it actually sounded pretty good. And so then it like that like fueled me to keep doing it. But then like everything after that, probably the next 20, 30 tracks were just terrible. You know, like, it's like, how did I, you know? So,
well, not to mention too that how phenomenal you are on bass playing.
Oh, thanks. Well, yeah, that was my first instrument. So that's where I came from. And I thought I was going to, I don't know if I thought I was going to have a career, but I longed to have a career doing like solo bass shows, you know, which, man, come on, that's hard enough. I mean, it doesn't matter how good you are, like what, like, you know, come on. You better be like a super marketer or something, or have some kind of, you know, juju sauce to make that happen.
Yeah.
It was fun. I made like a little record, and that was all during the same time. After I got off the road, I made the little solo bass record, and I started trying to get into the film and TV stuff. And after that, I started honing my skills as playing guitar, producing, working with versatile instruments, a little percussion, you know, shakers and tambourines and stuff. I could play the drums just a little bit, enough to record some parts, and started learning keys, you know, because, you know, for producing and all that, you need that. Never played live, but put me in the studio and I can punch in, I'll play keys all day.
Yeah. You kind of have to in the DAW world. You really kind of just having a little keyboard. It's so easy, you know. So you can pick it on the fly. Well, that's cool, man. Well, what did you get? What was your like, what was probably one of your biggest placements, or what was one of your first placements that you noticed that you're like, whoa, this thing's kind of cool?
Yeah. Okay. So funny enough, I come from being a bass player. Well, me and another co-writer, Chuck Schlachter, we got together and he was part of a library and I think I was part of one library at the time, musical library. He's like, well, let's get together and do a collection. And he was nice enough to be like, I'll introduce you to, these guys or whatever. And if we co-write something together, then maybe they'll want your stuff too. And, just kind of,
Cool.
Yeah, kind of collaboration, friendship, kind of networking.
Yeah.
And so we wrote some stuff and it was kind of like, I can't remember. I think it was kind of funky rhythm tracks. I think it was like guitar, bass, drums, and some percussion and stuff. Well, so I think it was like a year after that, we found out something got placed. And I think it was on maybe the 25th anniversary Fox special or something. And it was under Ryan Seacrest talking. And it was
that's sweet.
I don't know, 10 or 20 seconds. And it was only the drum and the bass stem. So it's like, and Chuck had done the drums and I'd done the bass, so it's funny. The first thing that ended up getting placed was my bass,
Yeah.
Oddly enough.
Well, that's pretty cool. And that probably was like that was your first, how long into from you deciding that, hey, I think I'm going to try this thing, and then you got your first placement?
A good question.
If you remember.
Yeah. So like 2010 is when I started this whole thing, this whole shenanigans. And yeah, who knows? Maybe in the beginning of 2013, is when I saw it show up on the royalties. So that minute probably got placed like at the beginning of 2012 or somewhere in 2012. So with a little bit of know-how to record and some stuff, like some of that background stuff. Let me mute my phone real quick. I guess 2 years.
Wow. Yeah.
And
so did you really feel like so you didn't come into it in 2010 with that much background in engineering, or did you have more of a
I did with engineering. So I recorded all the way from like high school. I'd record bands. And gosh, I remember as I started, I really honed in on my Pro Tools skills, because I'd use all different DAWs back in the day. And I was always told, Pro Tools is the one to use, especially like from the engineer buddy that I'd mentioned earlier. And just to be able to work in recording studios, because not only do I like to write my own music, I really love producing and working with other artists or bands, and whether it's remotely or live. And so after I started, and my whole bass solo album was done in Pro Tools as well. So, I was like learning my craft with my own music and helping other bands kind of locally. So by the time I started chomping at the bit for the composing stuff, it was really more learning virtual instruments and making sure the quality and the style and the kind of mechanics of the music was fitting right for film and TV. And then my mixing chops, like I really had to, I realized real early on that like, my mixing had to go way up, so the quality of it, it's got to be a good idea. You got to finish the idea, and then the quality got to be good, and then it's got to fit for the application. There's so many different things, but as we start off, we're not thinking about all that, or else our mind would blow up. We're just like, this is great. I'm going to do this. I love this, and you just hit the ground running. That's how I am. Like, I'll measure. I'll usually measure once and then cut, where they say measure twice. Fun. I want to screw up and then be like, all right, you know what I mean? I don't know, because that's part of my process. I have fun with that. I like to mess up. It's not always like the best feeling, but it pushes you. All the bad critiques, and whether they were gently bestowed upon me or not, like I was just that's what like kept pushing me further and further, because I realized I could always get the gold out of it and see, okay, I'm really good in this area, but in this area not so much, And then sometimes that's when you go find a co-writer, be like, okay, my lyrics sucks. And call on Steve.
Yeah, well, and it's really funny because I've really, I've asked you so many questions. I've really looked up to you in all your mixes and all the engineering stuff, the things, it's like you're a whole another level above where I was. And I was like, man, how are you getting that? And I must have, there's got to be at least 1,000 questions I've ever asked you, more than that, maybe. Just like, well, what do you plug into there? How are you doing this? So I've learned a ton through you, you know, especially earlier on, asking some of the dumbest questions, you know. It's like, I can't remember some of them, but
that stuff, you know, and in any like friendship or like in songwriting, like you want to find someone that just meshes real well. Like everything that I'm good at or the best at is not going to be what you're the best at, and things you're best at, I'm just like, I'm just gonna let Steve do that. Like I could do that, but guess what? It's going to take me 10 hours. I give it to Steve. He'll come up with an idea, you know, in 30 minutes. So,
yeah. And that's probably another reason why we did so many co-writes and it was so quick, is because you knew your strengths, I knew my strengths, and we just was like, let's just hold hands here and let's bet a bigger team, you know. So that's really cool.
Like what I see a lot of times in co-writing, especially if someone hasn't written a lot, or just, you know, honestly, you let pride or whatever get in the way. It's just like, oh, well, you know, I want to, you know, if you're like, I want to take a crack at mixing it because I want to learn to mix, like, yeah, that's totally cool, of course.
You know, I think we did a few of those too, didn't we? I think we did a few where I mixed it and then I was just kind of taking a crack at it so that I could learn. And you were like, yeah, we'll play with this and try that. And
yeah, exactly. And then your stuff sounds fine, you know, but it's really just playing to your strengths. So it's like, is that what you're looking for? And so it just was a good gelling with that, where we're able to be like, yep, I'm not that great at that yet. And because there's been some songs maybe in the last couple of years where I'm like, let me try to sing a chorus, and then we made it work. But honestly, it ended up taking a little bit longer, which is fine. You know, it could be cool, but because it's just not our natural flow. But you know, you're fine because, you know, I was trying to grow in my singing and like and lyric writing, you know. And the same thing if you're gonna mix something, it's like, so you still want to grow in those areas, you know. But in the meantime, like, you know.
Yeah. No, I hear you. That's awesome. Well, there's definitely, we got something worked because we got one on the Big Bang Theory, and that one just keeps paying all the time, and that's great. Yeah. So, all right, I got another question for you. So how do you know when one of your tracks is done? Like what gives you the final check where you're like, I think this one's done?
But I'm sick of listening to it. No.
Good, that's a good answer.
Gosh, so, you know, the longer you go on, like the less time it takes you to mix something now, you know. So at least with, let's just say with the music that we do, because that could go anywhere with different styles. But you know,
yeah, when it's done, you just know.
Oh, I just no. So like with film and TV music, it's different than if I'm just mixing like a project for someone else, because I'm kind of mixing as I go, and like with the arrangement, and as a producer, you learn that, you know, and Rob Shirelli said this, that the mix is in the arrangement. You know what I mean? So like, there needs to be more high end in the track. Well, then like I did a video the other day where like I put a saw synthesizer in it, and so like that's my more high end. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like if I'm just like, man, there's not enough low mids, well then I'll find an instrument that fits that place. You know, so I'm mixing, and all the way to the end, I'm mixing and arranging, you know, with this stuff. And there's some points where I can literally just go back in when I know it's finished and then just like do a remix because I know everything's good there. And then I might actually start muting things. But gosh, for me, it's just, I think when I get to the point where everything's exciting and I feel like there's no just dead space, and dead space isn't bad, but not like bad dead space. You know what I mean? Like, and when I start listening at lower and lower volumes to make sure the mix is sounding really smooth, I know I'm almost done. And that's when I'll just find little tiny things, you know, that I might want to add or subtract or whatever, as far as like little overdubs. But it seems like I just like go a little more rogue about it now, whereas before I was very, very particular. It's like it still sounds particular, but like there's steps that like I just kind of corners I cut now that I realized it was always more like an OCD thing to do, like with edits and stuff like that. But I'm still careful, you know, in that manner. But
so you don't spend 10 hours on fine tuning the reverb on the snare.
Not at all.
But it's funny, early
on. days, the only reason I manipulate them is just to make them sound different, not to make them sound good. So like recording a live drum kit's a whole different story because you're trying to, you know, get a certain sound and stuff. And you need to really go in there. And I mean, I just use lots of automation when it comes to like live instruments. And or like if I'm mixing a country record, for instance, like some of those things that come from Nashville sound so good that I'm leveling things all over the place and like doing like broad, you know, EQ, shelving and stuff like that. But besides that, you know, it's, you know, if you have a good performance, good instrumentation, and it's recorded well, and what you're really doing is just taming everything down, you know, and then making things exciting in places where it was too low. So.
Wow, that stuff's good. You know what we need to do, man? We need to do a mixing interview, or we need to just I need to just get in your brain and just pick out a bunch of so like, what's a low shelf? What's a high shelf? Do I want a shelf? Maybe I want to build a.
Maybe you want a bookcase? I don't know.
A bookcase. Yeah, we'll have to do that in the future. We'll have to dive real deep in. All right. Well, let me give you. We're running out of time, so let me give you one more question. Then we'll do some batter box, I guess you'd call it, or rapid fire questions, or I call them desert island questions. So what kind of things?
Oh, desert island. Yeah.
We'll do the desert island. Yeah. So what would you? Last question I'll ask you. What advice would you give yourself, or would you give newbies starting into the sync world, and what number one advice you'd give yourself, I guess, looking back?
Patience.
That's a cool.
Yeah, especially in networking and meeting people, not trying to force things, you know, because you can sit in your room all day long and play and record things, and so which would take me to number two is that, you know, to get critique and feedback on stuff. But you can do that all day long. But then when you get out there and meet people, when you go to like songwriting conventions, is just be patient with the people you meet. Like especially if you meet someone where you think they're like a big deal, or they're going to help you out, like just try to become friends with them. You know, don't seem needy and desperate, you know, because, yeah, that's not good. Yeah.
I think people can feel it too when you're like, even if you say, hey, how you doing? And if you're like, hey, how you doing? And you're like, you just feel this vibe of this person's like.
They take the grill out and they're like, oh, lost it.
I know.
In fact, most people that are like way, like, I guess more experienced than me, like mixers and engineers and stuff I've become friends with them, but actually we've never even done anything for each other, but then some of that camaraderie actually fuels you, because actually we have done things because they'll give me advice and stuff like that. But you know, what are you looking at first? You know, when you're younger, you're like, oh man, they're the ones that are going to make me famous or something, you know, or whatever this big thing is. You know, meeting people that are famous don't make you famous, you know. I mean, maybe, but
that's right. Yeah.
Make yourself famous.
I know, and I found too, when I'm meeting people, saying like, yeah, earlier on in my career, I needed to meet all these people. I needed to make connections because I didn't have any. And it kind of like people kind of like they feel that vibe. And then I found over the years, when I don't need to, when I'm so busy with so much work, it's like, in a way, you know, we've been to events and stuff, and we're like, I don't really want to meet anyone new because they're going to ask for more work and stuff. And it's those cases when you meet people and you're like, hey, how you doing? Then they actually kind of come across like, oh, show me some more of your stuff. And you're like, yeah, maybe.
Talking about?
What was that?
What kind of relationships are we talking about here?
Right.
You're trying to meet a girl and
yeah, exactly.
That's relationships, man. That's, you know, just.
Yeah. That's all right. So let's do some rapid fire desert island questions. All right. If you're on a desert island, you can only take one compressor, VI or hardware.
Oh yeah, the CLA2.
I thought you'd say that. It's a good compressor.
Yeah, LA2A clone.
All right. Very cool. All right. So what about reverb?
Reverb, R-verb. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. What about a delay?
Delay, H delay.
H delay. That's
Number
good.
2 would be replica.
Replica? Okay, cool.
Waves, man.
That's cool. And what about a virtual synth or a virtual instrument? You can pick any. Like, you can only take one.
Well, I could say contact, and that could include.
Yeah, that's true. That's
contact.
True.
Yeah.
With all the libraries, yeah. Well, you could actually. I would take Contact.
Yeah. But I guess if it's one that literally you can't really load anything else into, like I guess Omnisphere, just because I use that, it's so versatile. And then I'm sure they'll update it again, and they have the newer sounds for the pop stuff now, and they have all the different stuff for ambient, anything you want really.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, the last thing, what is there any new toys you got or anything, or new plugins that you'd want to share with us that you should check this new bells and whistles thing out that you've been loving lately?
Not really, because I'm building a studio in my backyard, so I can't afford to buy
Your plugin.
Oh gosh, have I bought anything new lately? I bought this fancy camera.
Yeah, there you go. Well, what about any? What do you kind of have fun with on a virtual instrument or a delay that you kind of like? You just love it. It's just like you just love dialing in different sounds or playing with different.
I'd say Replica is really cool, which is Native Instruments, because I don't really use it as a delay. I use the I forget what the setting is, but anyways, you can just make it have this huge ambient sound, and but I ride it just like you would a delay. Instead of like turning up reverb during tails on a vocal, like a vocal tail, I'll just automate or actually draw in like the volume and turn it on during that point. It just it's like a burst of reverb.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I might have to play with that myself. Yeah, because for anybody who doesn't know, you got to check out Matt's music. His stuff is really, really, really good, and it's really clear, and his mixing is phenomenal. And so, how can they hear some of your music?
Yeah, just go over to www.mattmossmusic.com. That's just my name, mattmossmusic.com.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, cool, man. Well, it's so good having you here for part one. We're going to do part two. I'm going to ask you a few more questions. We'll do a few more desert island questions, and then we're actually going to do another video as well of how our song landed on the Big Bang Theory, which that'll be fun. So really cool. All right, man. Well, thanks for coming in. Thanks for being on the virtual Zoom.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
All right. See ya.